on the ocean floor that NASA is targeting for further examination.
Tests have revealed traces of illegal drugs or alcohol in singer Rick Nelson and the 6 other passengers who died with him in an airplane fire. The test results were released by the National Transportation Safety Board. They show that only the pilot and co-pilot of Nelson's DC-3 had no traces of drugs or alcohol in their blood at the time of the New Year's Eve incident. The crewmen were the only survivors when a fire in the passenger compartment forced the pilot to make an emergency landing near DeKalb, Texas. The Safety Board investigation of the plane fire is continuing, and officials have confirmed that the probe is looking into the possibility that freebasing cocaine, in which a flame is used to process the drug, may have contributed to the fatal fire.
The Stars were out last night in Hartford, Connecticut, where the National Hockey League staged its mid-season classic. All of the league's top players were on hand for the 38th annual All-Star game, and it turned out to be a dandy. An overtime goal by Brian Trottier proved to be the difference as the Wales Conference nipped the Campbell 4-3. Sports thrillers weren't confined just to the ice, and Atlanta top-ranked North Carolina also needed an extra session to squeak out a win. This one, 78-77 over number 2 Georgia Tech. We'll have highlights on those games and the Celtics win over Milwaukee later in the newscast. I'll tell you, there's not a whole lot of good weather on that map this morning. A little bit out on the west coast and down around Florida, but that's about it.
It's Carl, and the weather at this hour, it is snowing in the Pacific Northwest over to the flatlands of Nebraska. Some rain in Texas with heavy thunderstorms throughout the south extending up to the Great Lakes. The Northeast also has snow, but the southern coasts on both sides of the country are clear. High today will be in the 20s and 30s in the central states, warming up to the 70s in the south. The west coast will be in the 30s to 60s. We'll have a complete forecast coming up on today's Weather Watch.
When BIZNET News returns, Money Matters examines pension benefits, 9 minutes after the hour. As the United States and Egypt continue their diplomatic drive for achieving a stable, peaceful Middle East, the two nations continue also their increased trade and economic exchange. 7,000 years ago, civilization began along the Nile Valley. Today, tourists visiting those sites is one of Egypt's leading industries. The Valley of the Kings, the Roman amphitheater in Alexandria, the temples at Aswan, the pyramids and the Sphinx just outside Cairo, the Alabaster Sphinx of Memphis, and, of course, the River Nile itself. These are but a few of the attractions that bring tourists by the thousands to Egypt every year. Cairo, the largest city in Africa and the 6th largest in the world, has become the financial and commercial hub for trade between 3 continents. The democratically elected government of Egypt is pledged to an open-door economic policy for foreign investors. Attracted by low taxation, a willing and available workforce, profit incentives, an expanding Egyptian economy, and attracted by the cooperative climate between the Egyptian government, Egyptian banks, and the U.S. investor. United States private investments are flourishing in Egypt. Pepsi-Cola, General Motors, Ford Motors, Marriott, Chase Manhattan, Gulf Oil, Mobil Oil. These are but a few of the major U.S. corporations with investments in Egypt. Hundreds of smaller U.S. companies are there now. Hundreds more are planning their expansion. And it makes good economic sense. For Egypt is the logical link between millions of Middle East and African consumers and U.S. manufacturers. Rich in history, rich in opportunity. Grow with Egypt. For details, write to the commercial